What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel as you tune in and you check out the content. And with that being said, man, I want to. Steve Kerr just continues to take heat for for letting Kuminga go, number one, and number two, for not being able to develop talent, and to carry the Golden State Warriors into the next generation as far as like rebuilding a new team around young talent. And I don't really people talk about being able to rebuild, like to prepare the team for the next challenge or the next generation. But if you look historically, like that is hard to do unless you get a player, a generational type player, then it's hard to do. I mean, when you look at the Chicago Bulls, right? And Michael Jordan, I think Michael Jordan played Chicago, I think 13 years. And for the 13 years that he played in Chicago, somebody could say, well, Phil Jackson could have built another team to come behind Michael Jordan. But there wasn't no more, he didn't have a new Michael Jordan. I think Phil Jackson, if he'd have had the next Michael Jordan, he would have stayed, right? So it's hard to do. When you look at the Showtime Lakers back in the day, when they had Magic, Kareem, Byron Scott, James Worthy, and all those guys, unless you draft, unless Pat Riley would have had another Magic Johnson coming in behind Magic Johnson, then you're talking about a generational player. That's what you need. You're gonna have talent coming in, but you're not gonna have that generational type talent like a Magic Johnson. So it's hard to go into the second generation with average players or just regular players. Same thing with Detroit and Boston. Like once Larry Bird left, the Celtics was off for a while. They wasn't KC Jones, KC Jones would have stayed. I'm sure he would have stayed if you had another Larry Bird coming in behind this Larry Bird. But and same thing with Detroit. Once Isaiah left, then Detroit kind of fell off. So it's only natural that Steve Kerr, he did with what all the rest of those great coaches did. He rode this thing until the wheels fell off. You got Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson, right? They won 4 championships together. So you can't. It's I don't know of any other team besides like the Spurs. Like the Spurs, they had Tim Duncan. And now the Spurs got this guy, man. This kid, Victor Wembanyama, is just a beast. He's a legitimate generational talent. Now, I think that the coach, Greg Popovich, wishes that Wembanyama had a came sooner when he was when Popovich was healthy enough to take part in Wemby's career, man. Because this guy Wemby is getting ready to do something. I think, in my opinion, Wemby is really going to do something historic. He's a generational talent, you may as well say. So it's a lot to ask of a coach to develop talent and to carry, to have a continuous, a continuous dynasty for generation and generations. It don't typically happen. You need generational talent in order to take your team into the next generation. And teams typically don't get 2 generational talents in a row. And so they were discussing this on the Odd Couple, right? And I'm gonna play some of the comments by Rob Parker and his co-host, you know, and then I'm gonna come back and give some of my input. I think that I think it's unrealistic, though, in my opinion, to expect Steve Kerr. And I'm not even a Steve Kerr fan, but when you look historically at like what coaches have been able to do that with, follow up Michael Jordan with another Michael Jordan, or follow up Kobe Bryant with another Kobe Bryant. Larry Bird, you follow up Larry Bird with another Larry Bird, it don't happen.
Man, we got a really good topic coming up here, and Rob G is going to get us started on Steve Kerr had a big interview in the Bay Area, and he said some things that were pretty interesting.
That's right. I'll be your Molly Kieran, Rob. No problem.
There you
Stephen
go.
A,
Except for she's a little bit cuter than
she
you.
is.
Okay.
No, I'm not gonna lie. Shout out to Molly Kieran. Yes, big news coming down in the Bay. Now we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now on the show. You've been saying, Rob, for a long time that you didn't like the way Steve Kerr was handling Jonathan Kuminga, right? Like you didn't like what was going on, yo-yoing back and forth on the bench. Sometimes he plays, sometimes he doesn't. So they eventually trade him, right? He goes to Atlanta. In 3 games with the Hawks, he's averaging 21 and 7 in 27 minutes a game. They're outscoring opponents by almost 31 points per 100 possessions when he plays. So far, so good for Kuminga in Atlanta.
I'm not shocked.
Not shocked at all, which led to, most recently, Steve Kerr appearing on the radio 95.7 The Game with Mark Willard.
Mark Willard.
All right, so look, so I like Jonathan Kuminga, right? And Jonathan Kuminga is having a good, he off to a good start, right? But that's only, number one, it's only 3 games. You talking about a man who was with a team who won 4 championships, right? And so, in no comparison, I hope that Jonathan Kuminga have a good career over with the Hawks. But in no comparison, you got to think, like, what would you do? Would you ride the big 3 in Golden State till the wheels came off, or would you invest in Jonathan Kuminga, who can win you 3 games? The choice is obvious.
Shout out to Mark Willard giving us content 2 weeks in a row.
My first partner here at Fox Sports Radio, Mark Willard.
So Mark Willard,
I never miss his show in the Bay Area.
I know you don't.
I never listened to it, so I never miss it. I'm sorry.
See,
go ahead.
You ain't gonna make it 6 years.
5
years. So Mark had Steve Kerr on his radio program yesterday morning, and he asked him point blank, "What do you say to the fans in the Bay Area who point to Kuminga and say, 'See, you don't know how to develop young talent'?" Here's Steve Kerr's response.
I remember when I got to Chicago, we had a couple of drafts, and I was in my 10th year, 9th year, and I asked Phil Jackson, what he thought of the guys we drafted. He said, "Well, it won't matter for a few years." And I said, "How come?" He said, "Well, because grown-ups win championships." And it's true. It's really hard to come in as a young player and be expected to have the knowledge and skill and feel that you have to have to be a championship NBA player. I would equate it to just about anything else on earth. Tell me the profession where the guy with the highest test scores at Stanford can go and, be a CEO or, be a partner in a firm or something. It just life doesn't work that way. And so I think when I think about any frustration from our fans, it's probably just coming from this idea that young players should get it right away. It just doesn't work that way.
And all right. So I think Rob Parker is going to push back on that, right? But when you think about it, you think about it when you think about what he just said, right? In what industry can you come in and you hit the ground running, and even when Michael Jordan, he had to learn how to win. Kobe Bryant had to learn how to win. Magic had to learn. Larry Bird, all those guys, Isaiah Thomas, they had to learn how to win at the next level. Sure, you get prepared, like college prepares you for the NBA, but then it's still a step up. You still is on some on-the-job learning. It took Michael Jordan 7 years, to win his first championship. Now, I don't talk about Magic because they won it in Magic rookie year. But for the most part, man, it just takes, and it's you're talking about a team sport. It just takes a while for those guys to learn how to win at that next level, right? And so, and develop those guys, and that's you starting a whole new project. It's like if you build a house, right? You build a house, and once you finish that house, now you go and you have that knowledge, but now you got to start over from the ground up with that next house, man. You know how to, but it still takes time, right? And when you bringing in new talent, you bringing in young guys like Kuminga and whoever else you bring, it's like starting all over again, So, and that's one thing I think that Rob Parker should understand, right? Is that building another dynasty or going into that second generation is like starting all over and building a new house.
So lame, and I'm not surprised to hear that from Steve Kerr. I would say if I was Mark Willard, I would have pushed back. Steve Kerr, you're talking about Phil Jackson, who had Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, and who was winning championships. So they got very low-rated, right, draft picks that joined the Bulls.
Okay.
All right. If you're going to do this, Keith, and say that adults win championships, right? Not rookie players, not draft picks. Why the hell did you draft Wiseman or Moody or Kuminga? You should have traded them, right, on draft night because they're not going to help you win. It's a cop-out. How about the idea that, and Steve, why can't you admit that you can't develop young players? When they got Wiseman, they were like, oh, my God, they're going to be good for 20 years. Look at that. They're going to add them to what they already have. And they weren't able to do anything. The more I look at Steve Kerr's career, coaching, and how he's come off, it makes me want to throw up in my mouth. He's disrespectful to fans because he says to them when he sits down his stars and they've paid $400 or $500, tough luck. I guess, when you just have to suck it up and you bought the tickets and you're stuck. Now he isn't able to develop lottery picks, and then he's an enabler to Draymond Green, who he talks about adults in the room. Draymond is the biggest baby out there. So what is it, Steve Kerr? Explain to me. And thank God Mark Jackson got this thing started for you when you picked up Steph.
Don't go there with it.
Because that's what it is, Keith. What is he talking
everybody
about?
has played that game. How many rings does he have with?
Yeah, I mean, all right, and that's the only thing. I just feel bad for Mark Jackson. He didn't get to enjoy, the fact that he put together this team, but that's beside the point, right? I just think that he built this. He was a part of this dynasty, whether you think he built it or not. And to build a whole nother dynasty, man, that's just like starting all over again. I wish I would have been able. I wish we would have been able to see, say if the Spurs had they had Tim Duncan, and then Tim Duncan last 2 years in the league, they luck up and they get Wembanyama, right? I think then, just like when the Spurs had David Robinson and then they lucked up and got Tim Duncan, I think then you can go into that next generation, because now you got a generational talent on the heels of another generational talent, right? But if you don't get that generational talent for that, and I've never seen that happen in NBA history, right? And I just think that somebody like Rob Parker would understand that and know that. Like, if you look at the history of the league, you never see Boston Celtics get Larry Bird behind another Larry Bird just to continue that next dynasty or start that next dynasty. So that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also, don't forget to leave a comment, and I'm gonna check y'all out in the next video. Peace.